Call us to order. I think we all know each other, do we? Is there anyone we need to introduce?
Oh,
I think not. Okay, well, this is the public comment for agenda item statement. Individuals who are unable to provide testimony at this time will be allowed an opportunity to testify when specific agenda items are called. For both internet and phone access, when testifying, you will be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 5 minutes of testimony per agenda item. All witness testimony submitted are public documents. Therefore, any testimony that is submitted orally or in writing, electronically or in person, for use in the public meeting process is public information and will be posted on the board's website. So, take it away, Laura.
all right. And I just want to recognize we do have Jeanette and Clem who are with us. And I believe Roberta is traveling. Is that correct, Bree? I think so. So thank you everyone for being with us, and Happy New Year to the board and staff. I hope you all had a restful new year and were able to recover a little bit, and that the many infectious diseases that are out right now didn't get to you. So we have a pretty open agenda today, a lot of time for discussion. And so with that, we'll be looking for your insight and your advice and counsel on the topics that we have coming up on today's agenda. And so please do, please do take this opportunity to provide that counsel. That's why we have the pleasure of having an advisory board. And I think, as we recognize, there is a lot on the table. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. And I'm trying to find where, there we go. So our agenda today, we're going to be talking about the policy updates, namely the Nurse License Compact. That is something that we know for certain will be introduced. And then I can talk about two issues that we suspect will be coming down the pipeline this legislative session. Today was the first day of the legislature, so though there are some early introduced bills, we won't see the full slot of bills until next Wednesday, which is the bill introduction cutoff. The next item is that we will just have program updates. This is actually just an open conversation. If you have any comments or questions or feedback related to the annual report, we don't have any specific presentations for you, but just kind of wrapping up what we have closed out. And then we will then move into the initiative and priority updates. We can revisit the working document for wellness as a factor of recruitment and retention. We really had to put a pause on that so that we could work on the many things that we did in 2023. So trying to bring that back. And then we have some advisory board planning, other business and announcements, and then we will wrap it up. So to start, we have the Center for Nursing. Oh, I'm going in the wrong direction on my paper slides. Please excuse me as I correct the direction I'm moving in. We're going to first talk about the Nurse License Compact. So just as a quick overview, and I know we sent out the report that is publicly available on the University of Hawaii Government Relations website. And then we are also pulling some slides that I presented at our nursing education event that we held last month in December. And so we'll just quickly go over that just so you have a quick overview for the discussion. And then what I'm really asking for you all is to help provide what that testimony will be. So have that decision made for our testimony that will be coming for the legislature. So why, just as a reminder, why do we engage at the Center for Nursing in policy? Policy affects recruitment and retention on the nursing workforce. It informs the scope of practice and licensing. It supports educational access, both by describing what schools can be authorized in our state, and then the Board of Nursing actually does approve and authorize schools of nursing individually, and then also for our many UH programs, faculty is tied to the legislature as well. And then there's also specific patient-specific care considerations. It could be, it could be insurance access and pre-existing conditions and HIPAA, and there's also certain kinds of healthcare, in guidelines about insurance coverage and specifics, et cetera. So with that and the center, and I found this nice quote a couple of years ago, as nurses, we need to think of policy as something we can influence, not just as something that happens to us. And that's really what the Center for Nursing does as a resource of public information. We produce the research that can inform public policy. We also find national best practices. And so we try to be a source of quality and trusted information for our state and our decision makers. The nurse license compact, or moving on to the next slide, and I gave a couple examples of how policy impacts education, recruitment, retention, and practice environments, which are all kind of within the scope of the Center for Nursing. And here's some more examples, and I think we can all think of many on the top of our own heads. So next slide. The nurse licensure compact was introduced last year. We don't have the bill numbers this year. I did find out what we suspect, and I don't know if anybody has more information. We do suspect that a bill will be introduced. So I expect to see a nurse license compact bill in the next week or two bills, or sometimes there will be 9 bills with the same topic. Yeah, we'll find out. But with that, trying to prepare for the upcoming hearings, because this is such a large topic, I think normally it's very clear what the position of the Center for Nursing should be. The Center for Nursing oftentimes just provides comments only, and if it is clearly aligned with the national best practices, then we oftentimes will provide testimony and support. We do that because we oftentimes, if we don't necessarily have, if we are providing just information, we will use comments only just to provide additional information. We don't always need to provide testimony in support, and rarely do we provide testimony in opposition. But the reason that we provide testimony, whether or not we are interested in supporting a bill, is really to be that source of public information and quality trusted information about the nursing workforce. So last year there was a bill, that bill died as HB 667 and SB 670. Those bills did not move forward. They technically can be carried over into the 2024 session. And instead of the bills, there was SCR, Senate Concurrent Resolution 112, which resulted in the study that the Center for Nursing undertook this past year. Next slide. The nurse licensure compact itself, in their about page, says the benefits of the nurse license compact is to enable nurses to practice in person and provide telenursing services to patients across the country without obtaining additional licenses, like a driver's license, which we'll look at that model in a second. It facilitates online nursing education. It removes burdens and expenses for organizations that employ nurses, allows nurses to quickly cross state borders and provide vital services in an event of a disaster, and makes practicing across state borders affordable and convenient. So how it works, next slide, is basically like a driver's license. So if Hawaii were to join the Nurse License Compact, Hawaii would issue 2 different types of licenses, a single state license and a multi-state license. If a nurse opts for a multi-state license, which oftentimes has an additional fee, that multi-state license authorizes them to practice in any of the states that are blue or purple that you see, and vice versa. So any of those nurses, if a nurse is in Kansas with their multi-state license, they could come into Hawaii and immediately work. 41 states have enacted the Nurse License Compact. Washington and Guam right now are accepting nurses with a multi-state license, but they're not issuing a multi-state license for their own state residents. So they're in an implementation phase. And I'm not quite sure Pennsylvania's status. or how they're doing the partial implementation. Next slide. So as I described, this is a little bit like a driver's license. And the way that they ensure public safety per the Nurse License Compact is that they have created the 11 uniform license requirements. And so there's some standards. You have to speak English, you have to not have any disciplinary action on any licenses that you hold, or your multi-state license. You have to have certain educational standards, you have to have passed the NCLEX, you have to be an American citizen, or you have a social security number. So there are some criteria. There's also a criteria about mental fitness and so you can't have substance abuse or issues. So there's some issues that we haven't fully resolved in our state. We have 6 of the 11 uniform license requirements that are already established, and the other 5, many of them the Board of Nursing does, but it's in practice, but it's not in policy, and it wasn't clear to me at the end of those discussions that we had in the study if they need to be turned into law, for instance. So if a nurse has a multi-state license, let's say in Kansas, as we were using that as an example, they can go to any other state that has a multi-state license or has joined the Nurse License Compact, and those other states provide permission to practice. So those nurses do not have a license in the other states, they have permission to practice, and those other states can revoke permission to practice, but only Kansas, if they're a Kansas license holder, only Kansas can remove the license. So there's kind of this relationship that happens. So if a nurse were to get in trouble in Colorado under their permission to practice, after the investigation is done, that information is sent over to Kansas, and then Kansas says, well, our state law is similar, and so they could make a similar action. If it's different, Kansas may not take reciprocal action. So there is that state autonomy to make those decisions. And so all states, once a decision is made, all states who are in the compact get the information about if there's discipline, and then they can decide if they make an action or if they don't make an action. And that's a longer conversation. So if we want to have questions about that, we can talk about that in a moment. So, skip the next slide and then move on to the nurse utilization. Thank you, nurse utilization and interest. So nationally, we found that in a sample study that the National Council of State Boards of Nursing and the National Forum of State Nursing Workforce Centers conducted in 2022 sample, and then it was published in 2023, 30% of the nation's nurses have a multi-state license compact. And thank you to Carrie. Yesterday, she reminded me that there is a study that found that within each state, it's about a 55% uptake. There's another article that cited just for nurse license compact states, about 55% of nurses have opted for the multi-state license compact. And then there's utilization. So of the nurses with a multi-state license compact, a little under 10% use it for travel nursing, about 9% use it for telehealth, distance education and disaster support, around 2.5%, and then the majority have not used it. In Hawaii, you see that there's more interest, which is interesting. So Carrie ran a survey, and thank you, Carrie, for doing that. So this was a convenience sample survey done over the summer, and of the nurses that responded, 65% of nurses said they were likely or very likely to apply for a multi-state license. And then you can see that of the intended primary use, it's almost double of what nurses who are actually doing it. So I don't know if some of it is aspirational, you can imagine potential, but when you get around to doing it, maybe who knows what will happen in reality. Or maybe we really do have more interest and engagement in our state. And I think both options are quite likely, and probably the future, if we were to join the multi-state license, we'd fall somewhere between the two. So, but we do see that there's more interest. 17% of nurses who said that they were likely or very likely to apply for a multi-state license. When you kind of boil down the intended primary use, half of those nurses would said that they intended to use their nursing services outside of the state. But again, there is kind of that double response rate from this national sample survey. So just an interesting variance between the two. Next slide. National research shows that it increases mobility between national nurse license compact states. So it is not like a teeter-totter where like it's a one-sided redistribution, like it is transfer. So this doesn't mean like Hawaii would get 10% more nurses. It means there'd be like 10% moving around. Also, all of the studies, Hawaii is N of one. I guess Alaska is, and Guam maybe. We don't have neighbors. So all of these studies, when they were conducted, were studies using states that had neighbors. And the researchers, when we asked them, they also commented that the greatest utilization of the nurse license compact was nurses crossing across state border lines. So they live on one side of the state border, and they cross over to the other. But that 10% was found in a study, and you can see the citations that are hard to read, but we can send you the links if you'd like to read the articles. And it also increases the job pool for employers because they get access to all of these nurses in the nurse license compact, or the applicant pool for employers, and then the job pool for nurses. So the nurses, again, across all of these states can apply to any of these jobs. For military, there was small to moderate increases, and actually between the two studies, there was a pretty big difference in their estimates, but both studies did find that military spouses tend to end up working in nursing when they PCS or move locations when they are in states with a multi-state license compact. With discipline, there was not a considerable difference in disciplinary actions between multi-state license holders and single state license holders. And with telehealth, it increases the ability for nurses to engage in telehealth. But interestingly, when Norris and Nandy, they looked at patient utilization. It actually doesn't increase patient utilization of telehealth. So I think maybe this is like telehealth is still establishing itself, and perhaps interstate telehealth care provided by nurses is something that can still be explored or hasn't really yet codified into practice. For our local considerations, which is the next slide. So recruitment is one of our main focuses at the Center for Nursing. We have two mandates. When the conversations that came up around recruitment really focused on the licensure processing time. And it was noted that licensure processing during COVID was up to 65 business days. And that currently we're around 25 business days, which actually is a return to pre-COVID processing time. And this was before the online license application system being set up. Filling nursing vacancies, employers noted, has been a challenge due to license processing delays. And this was a repeated statement, but we don't actually have data related to this, so we don't know to the extent that this is a challenge. But this was a frequently commented phenomenon. For emergencies throughout COVID-19, the pandemic, and in other natural disasters, namely the wildfires on Maui, we have in our state used emergency proclamations. And during those times, so basically since 2020, March 2020, nurses who are coming in under an emergency proclamation are not registering with the Board of Nursing. Also, we found through the study that regardless of states having a nurse license or being part of the nurse license compact, they still used emergency proclamations. And this is because not every state is part of the nurse license compact, and not every nurse has a multi-state license. So around 50 to 30% of those nurses in multi-state license compact states have that license that makes them mobile. So emergency proclamations are that safety net for all of the nurses who make them. And then from a workforce data perspective, some states, and they're states that have more recently joined the compact, so Louisiana, Washington, and Guam, and I think there's one other state, require nurses to register in some way into an employment database, which is eNotify. And eNotify, which is the public-facing product of NurseSys, which our Board of Using already uses, can be updated by employers or by nurses. And depending on the state, they either require the employer or the nurse. There's not a lot of data. There's actually no reports or national research about the efficacy of this approach. And it's also pretty new. The first state to do that was launched in 2019. But those are approaches that have been done, been utilized in 4 states. As it relates to nursing workforce research, that we don't use that licensure. We don't use NurseSys or eNotify for our research at the Center for Nursing. And our research focuses on nurses employed in the state or who are licensed and employed in the state. And likely, if we do join the compact, those nurses using their multi-state license, if they are seeking permanent residence, they are going to need to get a Hawaii license. Otherwise, they would be travel nurses, and we have a very small percentage who actually take our survey anyway. I think in the last report, it was like 4 to 6% of our sample was travel nurses, and Carrie had said that it might have 3%. Thank you, Carrie. And Carrie had mentioned that it wouldn't have a big impact on our nursing workforce supply survey. Workforce data, though, this licensure information does have a big impact on RICO. So, it may be more important for one entity over the other. And RICO is very clear about the need for accurate and accessible workforce information about people with licenses or permission to practice in our state. Next slide. Other local considerations are the revenue changes. So there would be a $1.2 million loss if we estimated by the NCSBN if we were to join today and make no other changes to our state. That revenue loss, about $400,000 of that would be to the Center for Nursing. And just so you all understand, we would just permanently lose those nurses' license fees, because they can come into our state by a different way. So that would just be like a reduction, and that would be like we would just like come down that level, and that would move forward. So other states, to manage revenue loss, they have made the nurse license compact more expensive for their own state nurses. And then you can see the mitigation strategy, and I have a couple more slides for you about that. So if we go to the next slide, this is the detail for our the 3 organizations that get funded through nurse license fees. And then the next slide after that is a little bit more detail as well. So you can see, and this is in our report. So this is based off the amount. So if there was $100 add-on fee, so the first 2 items don't include the base license fee of $196. But so NCSBN provided some numbers, and they said 858. So that second row in this table, there are nurses in Hawaii, licensed nurses in Hawaii who have multiple licenses, including a license in a multi-state license in another state who is part of the nurse license compact. So that would be like, let's say I, Laura, live in Hawaii, am a nurse, and also hold a license in Kansas. If we were to join the nurse license compact, it'd be likely that I'd be like, why have a Kansas license and a Hawaii license when I can get one multi-state license and be able to still do that thing in Kansas? That green, the third column, green row, there are nurses who are educated, live in Hawaii, do not have a Hawaii license for the sake of just using a state, have a Kansas license, have a license in another state that is a nurse license compact state. So also it'd be likely for them to be like, I can get this Hawaii license and get all these, get access to being a nurse in all these other states. The next column, they are out of state residents, let's say a Kansas resident, and they have a Hawaii license. So now they wouldn't need the Hawaii license because they can use their multi-state license. That's where that revenue loss would be. And then the out of state, and then the next two, they're out of state residents, but they're not in nurse license compact states, or they are foreign, and so there would be no impact. So you can see there's a little bit of detail. There's some nuance. It's not just like a clean number. And so just want to provide that to you. So if you're numbers minded, and Carrie has helped me. I've been working on a spreadsheet as well to kind of estimate how we could recover costs if we were to join. So, and then the other considerations, and this is the last slide, and then we'll open it up for discussion. We have workforce shortages right now. There's contention about why there is workforce shortages. Are there just nurses who are refusing to work as clinical nurses and they can be compelled to come back in, or have we not trained enough nurses? And the volume of healthcare is greater than the total number of nurses we have today. Regardless, we have fewer nurses than we need in our state, in our nation, in our world. There is need and better language today and in the past couple of years about safe staffing strategies, and it is a priority of our Center for Nursing. It's something that you all articulated at our strategic planning meeting a couple months ago. There are conversations, and very relevant conversations, if you're paying attention to the news, about ratios. Those bills have been introduced. They are conversations that are practical. There are conversations that are at the bargaining table. There are conversations that are practical in terms like daily staffing considerations, also at the bargaining table, also at the state legislature, also at the federal legislature. And then there's retention factors. So there are efforts to train, to support, to help nurses stay monetarily, and also in terms of the work environment. And then there's also, so all of that impacts and should be considered when making a decision. And then licensing considerations, there are other efforts underway. Temporary permits is getting processed through administrative rules right now that should expedite access to nurses through the traditional licensing model. And then there's also that online licensing processing. Last week, the Board of Nursing just updated their website, so the link is everywhere now. And so nurses, it should be a faster system because nurses should make fewer errors in their application process. So all of that should also impact, at the end of the day, with the study. The one thing that could be agreed upon by everyone was expedited access to nursing was the priority. So the question for you all is, should the Center for Nursing support or provide comments only or oppose the Nurse License Compact? And then if we, is there more dialogue that we need to provide? So it's starting to get dark, so I'm going to turn my light on, and that will be my cue to stop talking so you can all comment and have a dialogue.
Well, I can start. My gut level is that the nurses want this opportunity. Whether or not they're going to take it is probably a secondary consideration. I think Arthur and Rose guys can talk better about how the employers feel, but I think people are gonna, if they want to travel, they're gonna travel with or without this, and that the center kind of looks good getting behind supporting nurses and what they want to do with their careers and their lives. So I know there's fiscal things which are worrisome both to us and the Board of Nursing. And I think that the importance of of having nurses in this state behooves the powers that be to help deal with those revenue shortfalls. But on the surface, at my gut level, I think the center looks good getting behind it. But it's the work that Laura has done about this is so essential because we can't just go in there blindly like, oh, isn't this lovely? We have to be aware of where the issues are going to lie and what things we're going to have to do to meet those should we, when we encounter them. So that's what I think.
I'd like to comment on some things that you said, and I'm not at all sure that nurses in Hawaii who live and work here want or understand all of the implications well enough to know that in the long term, whether this would benefit them or not. I think it's such a complicated, a complex issue that I really question that nurses want it in Hawaii. I don't think nurses have been educated about it, and I think that the impact of it, if in fact becomes law, that that then the local nurses will realize the negative sides to it, and that it wasn't benefiting them well. Also, my gut reaction, since you brought that up, Anne, is as I've been a nurse for more than 50 years, and I've always had a worry, a concern about a move towards institutional licensure. And I really think for the profession that we need to be careful about sliding into that. And what I'm talking about, Clem, because you're frowning, is maybe I should expand on that a little bit, is that as far as institutions having control of education and licensure, which is an issue that we've talked a lot about in this in this dialogue. So I really appreciate all the work that Laura has done on this and refereeing everybody too. Thank you.
And Rose, you had your hand up.
I think from like an individual personal perspective, I personally feel like, wow, this is a great opportunity for me, because then I could probably have, even though I don't have plans to move, that it gives me an opportunity practicing wider area and probably think that I have more options. So like, I think it'll be a positive thing. But I had an interest, and from an employer perspective, they want the compact licensure because I think the immediate need is because there's so much short staffing. And it's just like, we just need bodies, and any positive thing towards it, like they're gonna like say, of course we favor this. But I had an interesting conversation with our government affairs person at my facility, and he was asking about this in my opinion. And what didn't resonate well was I think we've been talking about the impact and budget, Hawaii State Center for Nursing. People don't know they don't understand what that means. So I think we might have to, be able to say, you do what $1.4 million loss means, and be able to speak it to the programs that impact the nurse and the employers. So to be able to translate that so people understand how it's going to impact them. So, we might, like, for example, so this will mean your license, I don't know, I'm making it up, okay? This means your fee that you pay if you renew in Hawaii is going to go up by, from $100 to $300. This means that we will not be able to support all of our Hawaii nurses with residency program. I think we will have to know how to speak to the language that of the impact for the different people, so that it could really be a fair understanding of what that means. Because what I realized that as I was talking about like the budget and the impact and data, it wasn't really about the data anymore. Yes, the data drives a lot of the things that we make decisions on, but people are like, so data, what? So what, right? So it has to be, because we don't have that, this is the impact, and then that's gonna have a deeper dialogue.
That's super helpful. Thank you for that feedback. Gloria?
Like Anne, my gut says support it. However, listening to some of the implications that it may have, what comes to mind is what additional planning needs to be done in order to mitigate some of these circumstances. Not knowing like certain data, that's where the hesitancy comes in for me. Like how many Hawaii residents have to be educated to get a nursing license in nursing, and how many have returned home? How many nursing students that are institutions are actually out-of-state students, and do they intend to stay here after they graduate or return home to their birthplace or city of origin? And I think that for me plays a factor in this, because I don't know the data when we're talking about nursing positions and nursing shortages. And what is that going to do for us? Like, how does that data help to make a better decision on how we support or not support? The last thing is more about maybe, time limitations. Yes, you're part of the nursing compact license, but, is there a time limit that if you're working using this license within one particular state, that's 15
And that last question, there's a clear answer because NCSBN just updated their rules. So I believe it's 60 days if you change permanent residence. So if you're travel nursing for 12 weeks, you don't need to change your permanent residence, right? But if you move here, it says within 60 days, you need to secure that state license.
So that to me would help really with maybe some of the budgeting issues that were talked about, that there is going to be an application after a time period that can support Hawaii State Center for Nursing, of course, and that we possibly are working towards somewhat resolution of our nursing shortage here in Hawaii. But that's kind of the gist of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. And Arthur is next.
Hello, good evening. I have to totally agree with everybody else. And I'm speaking as an employer. I would have to be in favor of it. Just because we need nurses. I mean, until we start producing graduates and keeping these graduates, we're going to have to rely on travelers. I mean, and for example, our new grads to get a license, to take their exam, to get a license, to confirm their license, and to actually start working. I mean, that's like 4 to 5 months in our hospital. And that's with flying to Oahu too. So in the meantime, we have to replace them or staff the gaps with travelers. So that's the biggest thing. One of the slides that said local considerations, the 1.2 million I totally understand that. And we're going to have to adjust somehow to make that up. But on the hospital side, I spend 1.2 million a month just on travelers alone. At the lowest, it's at times it's been a lot higher than that. So one more thing I had to mention was the delays. Oh, so I did take a poll of my nurses, to about 200 of them, and maybe about 2% said they would actually move to the mainland. And the ones they want to move was just the young ones seeking for adventure. They've never been off the island, on and on and on. So I won't lose nurses, but travelers is my number one recruiting tool. I hire a bunch of travelers. After they do 1-2 assignments, they love the beaches, they love the food, they love the people, and they end up staying. So, yeah, it's just my comments. So I would say I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. That's helpful, Arthur. Jeanette, you're next, I think.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say too, thank you, Laura, and Carrie and everyone for that information, because it is really, really helpful and really thorough. And I can understand everyone's concerns. And just a few things that I wanted to clarify. One is I know you had mentioned about how the states have their individual their own, like if a nurse has charges brought against them in one state, then each state has their own process and is able to, address that. But how, if a nurse is coming here, how is it known if there was charges in another state, or if something occurred, or is that even pertinent?
That is a great question. And let me, I'm going to pull up the picture that I ended up drawing. So give me a second while I pull up the picture.
Oh, no problem.
Because it's a little bit complicated. Let me describe it and then I'll pull up the file. So the way it happens, and Carrie, maybe chime in as well. So the way it happens, you have a license in your home. It's called a primary state of residence, PSOR, primary state of residence state. And then if you're working in another state, that's permission to practice. If you do something wrong in your primary state of residence and you get a disciplinary action, that investigation is on your license. And that once there is a completed event investigation, and let's say there's some kind of action, disciplinary action put on your license, that gets put out through the nurse license compact signal. So it kind of like bat signals to every state, and they get an immediate notice. And then those states can make reciprocal action, or they can look at what happened. So they get that full kind of like case notes, and they can do they can review it as compared to their own state laws and apply. Now, let me clarify, because I was a little bit there's a point of clarification I need to make. If there's discipline against the license, that actually revokes their multi-state license, and they have to then apply for a single state license in all the states. In permission to practice states, so the other states, that's where when you get the case notes about what happened, those states can make a consideration. The primary state of residence state, the home state, can look at what happened. So let's say a Kansas nurse gets in trouble in Hawaii. Hawaii makes an action or a determination. And then Kansas, as the license issuing state, would look at their own state laws, use their own Board of Nursing policies and procedures to make that reciprocal action a different action or no action. So you can have states that disagree because they have different state laws. There's also, so once a nurse has a discipline action has been established, that is put onto their nurse's record. So that's how everybody knows. So let's say Arthur as an employer, and this is why we need a picture, because there's a lot of like if this then that's in these stories, or in these scenarios. But Arthur as an employer, then, I mean, this nurse is not applying to the Board of Nursing. They're not getting that yes, no authorization by the Board of Nursing. So as the employer, it's the responsibility, if he's going to be hiring a nurse with a multi-state, under a multi-state license permission to practice, that he goes into nurses and looks to see if there's disciplinary action. So it changes from the Board of Nursing's responsibility in the state to kind of manage this. They don't know if that nurse is in the state anymore. So now it's Renee's job and it's Arthur's job to put that into practice, to check on their license status before they start working. So this shifts that responsibility of management and monitoring to the employer. And it also really underscores the need. And we all know, like, let's say it's maybe not the most evidence-based practice, that if there is disciplinary issues, sometimes nurses will be offered the opportunity to vacate a position, and that complaint doesn't always make it to the Board of Nursing and RICO for investigations. It becomes very important that the employers participate in that regulatory process of reporting and supporting investigations. Because if there's a nurse who just got offered the opportunity to quit at one organization and then bounces to another organization and then bounces in a third organization, well, we have Coconut Wireless, but you don't have Coconut Wireless in another state. So that process of engaging in reporting is very important. But again, like the national studies didn't show that there was much difference in that between single state and multi-state licensed nurses. Carrie?
The one other thing I would add about that is, yes, a lot of the onus ends up falling on the employer to check. I think one of the things that I would recommend to employers to do is not just check the nurse's verification, because it will have a disciplinary history for every license, including all of the compact states if they have a multi-state license, if there was discipline in any of those jurisdictions. But if the nurse is currently under investigation, that doesn't necessarily reflect, because basically you're going to get a disposition in nurses, like there was a decision made on a disciplinary action. So it's probably prudent as part of the hiring process to ask a nurse, are you under investigation in any jurisdiction where you have a license as well, which they would have to disclose to you, because it's not going to turn up in nurses. So that's a side note.
Okay, so I'm going to share the picture. So the other thing that states have to decide. Okay, so there's can you guys see this picture? Okay, so you have a multi-state license. There's a complaint against that nurse with a multi-state license. On the left-hand side, this is the party state. Party state means not your home state. That's your, so they can start an investigation. The party state, it has to pay for all of the investigation fees up front. If there's no action, then there's no action and no discipline ever happens. So while that whole time that there's an investigation, as Carrie just mentioned, it's not on record. Many of the other executive officers that we interviewed across the nation, they said, like, if something's super egregious, they will call the other Board of Nursing and be like, you need to know what just happened. So because the Nurse License Compact authorizes that type of communication, it remains confidential. So if we think about it as HIPAA, like it is relevant to share case notes with that other provider or that other licensing jurisdiction. If there is disciplinary action, then all states are alerted, and then all of the other party states can make that action. And some states, they do reciprocal action. Like if Hawaii were to put on a restriction to permission to practice, maybe Colorado is like, yep, you're out. But then maybe Arizona is like, I will review case by case. I don't want to over limit just because, maybe we disagree with Hawaii. So let's see what happened. that takes extra bandwidth because you don't know if that nurse is in your state or not. So it does depend, and that is a workload issue for the licensing and regulatory folks. Now, if the PSOR state, as I mentioned, like as an investigation happens, that multi-state license is then suspended, and they can go into that single state license option. And then as soon as they clean up their license, so let's say they didn't do CEs, they got dinged for it, they completed their CEs, paid a fine, then they can opt back into that multi-state license. So that it's not a permanent, it's not always a permanent revocation of the license, depending on what the issue was. If they didn't do CEs, they can work to fix it. If they committed a felony, then they have all sorts of, maybe they're not ever getting a nursing license again. So clearly they're not going to be getting that multi-state license compact, or that nurse license compact. And I just want to say, because this was so complicated, NCSBN did do the final edits on this. So this is verified by NCSBN. While this is an important topic, I also want to recognize that nurses, by and large, don't get into trouble often. We tend to be rule followers. And I don't want to say that to belittle the need for ensuring safety. But I think we can all recognize that we need to know what the process is. We need to know how that shifts the environment onto employers for monitoring, changing the recruitment practice, like Carrie mentioned, to adding questions that may not be otherwise publicly available about a nurse, and then really making sure that that the HR department is knowledgeable about how how licensure has changed, or how access to nurses have changed.
Laura, I got a comment. All what you said is really, really accurate. I just want to add a couple of things. The compact will help in this process. Previously, past years, with the few diversions I've had, there's some shady stuff going on when they're jumping hospitals, like you said. And our biggest supporter is the agencies, the travel agencies. They're upfront and honest with us, and they track these people. So when you have a nurse that changes travel company, that's the biggest red flag right there. The process that mapping you showed has worked. Some of the delays I've seen is one board from one state, our state talking to another board in another state. There's big delays. It doesn't happen overnight, and there's a big delay. My workaround, I just called a DEA directly, the Drug Enforcement Agency. They arrest the nurse, the judge will put a suspension on their license, and then they'll keep it suspended until the investigation is over. So that's been my workaround in the past.
Thank you for that, Arthur. Clem?
I read this report so long ago, so I'm gonna read from my notes, because these are my main takeaways. So the nurse licensure compact, if adopted, will not resolve Hawaii's nursing shortage, will increase Hawaii's access to nurses in Hawaii, may put Hawaii at risk in that if Hawaii adopts the NLC, Hawaii could also lose nurses in Hawaii. Instead, we need to increase DCCA staffing to make it work. Recruitment and retention of nurses needs to be addressed. Delays in licensure affects recruitment. Legislative support for local nurses is needed. Cost of living needs to be addressed as it impacts recruitment and retention. Hawaii has more qualifying continuing competency activities than is surveyed by NCSBN. Timely licensure processing is imperative to the successful recruitment of nurses. The negative impact, as we've been discussing, is the loss of 1.36 million revenue to the Board of Nursing, RICO, and the Hawaii State Center for Nursing. The fees support organizational operations, including staff, administrative services, and functions and program for each organizations, while projected gain is only 180,000. Specific issues by RICO: loss of revenue, inability for the Board of Nursing to vet application for nurses, resulting in the absence of information that RICO would need to conduct an investigation. Specific issues by Board of Nursing: loss of revenue, patient safety, as we had already discussed, loss of autonomy to regulate nurses, to effectively regulate and ensure consumer protection, enforcement, because there is no requirement for a multi-state licensed nurse to report their presence to the board while practicing in the state. So those are my takeaways.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think, so what I'm hearing, if I can summarize, is, and I think we need a vote on it, but it sounds like in general, there seems to be a majority of people, and Renee, I don't think we've heard from you yet, but a majority of people who are supporting it. But what it sounds like it's saying is yes, and so yes, this is a good idea, and there's some conditions to how the nursing needs to be treated in Hawaii in general. And I think Clem, you kind of summarized some of those points, but we need to ensure that DCCA staffing is at a level that no matter what unimaginable circumstance happens in our state, that DCCA needs to be able to run at full capacity, that there needs to be that support for educational capacity, making sure that we are able to produce the number of nurses that we need in our own state, that the fiscal impacts should be addressed so that we don't have adverse outcomes to our organization's functioning, and that strategies to support recruitment and retention. I think earlier it was either Gloria or Arthur also talked about kind of the innovation in practice. So not just recruitment and retention, but that innovation and clinical environment or working environment wherever, in whatever setting, needs to be supported. So kind of that whole, not just looking at this as like a one-trick pony, but really saying that this is one, but that doesn't take anything else off the table. It's how I'm hearing everybody's dialogue right now. Is that fair enough? I think the testimony might end up being 13 pages. I'm going to work on shortening it, but that's how I'm hearing the dialogue right now, that it's a yes and that the other priorities do not take, that they don't, they're not second to the nurse license compact.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that summary.
Okay.
Yes, and.
Yes, and. All right. Oh, can we get a vote on that testimony in support with the additional considerations listed, just so we have that for the record? This is such a big issue that I want to make sure that we have that documented well.
So let's call for a vote right now. Do I need to make a motion for that, or can I just call?
Yeah, you can make a motion.
So I motion that we vote yes and or no. And maybe, but, or yes or no. We understand the complicity of this discussion, but we need to get behind Laura and the document when it goes to the ledge. So I motion we have a vote. Do I have a second?
Sorry, Anne, I'm gonna procedure situation. I don't.
Thank you, sister.
The motion is the introduction of a motion plus a second allows a vote. So I guess I'm not clear on what the substance of the motion is. I move that the testimony of the advisory board of the Hawaii State Center for Nursing as it relates to the legislation on the nurse license compact shall say the following. So I think that's what the content of the motion should be, is that the expectation is the testimony will include specific content.
Okay,
So I think that's the decision you guys have to make right now.
so is that part of the motion or can,
That would be the motion, yes.
The motion is the decision. So the decision is.
okay, and then we vote yes or no on the motion.
Mhm.
Okay, so what you said, Carrie, I make a motion that we vote as a board to support the nurse compact license legislation with all the considerations that the evidence and experience around the nation has shown us, as we just discussed and is in the written report currently.
Is there a second?
I second.
Arthur
Okay,
second.
do a roll call vote. So call
Okay.
everybody's name and get a yay or nay.
Who, me?
Yeah,
Okay, so is staff gonna vote?
no, just board.
Okay, so Arthur,
Yay.
Gloria,
Yay.
Linda,
Nay.
Clem,
So I was muted, nay.
okay, Jeanette,
Can I be undecided?
I
If
think
you
that's
abstain.
Or is it yay or nay?
If you abstain, the abstention by Robert Rules of Order goes to the A's, the yes.
Are you sure? I think it says it's supposed to be nay. If the person abstains, it's nay. Double
Okay.
check.
I'll look it up.
okay, well, so we're gonna put that as abstain right now. Renee
Yay.
and Rose,
Yay.
okay. So, you know what, I didn't tally those. Gloria, yes, Arthur, yes, Jeanette is abstaining.
I can say yay. I'll say
Okay.
yay.
All right, so, no, so Gloria, Jeanette, Arthur are yay. Linda is a nay. Clem is a nay. Renee is a yay. And Rose is a yay.
The chair has to vote.
And I vote yay. So that gives us 6-2.
You have a motion, you have a quorum, the motion carries.
Thank you, Carrie, for processing us through Robert Rules of Order voting.
Amen.
And let me go. Well, we didn't get to the abstention, so we won't. I will review that process in my handy book later.
So does that set you up, Laura?
Yes, that does. And thank you for that. I will use the comments of, I will use the comments that we have, the discussion that we used today, to support the bullet points that I will flesh out for the full testimony, using the considerations that were talked at length over the last hour. Okay, and then for the record, and Bree clarified that because Clem is ex officio, that her vote is not an official vote, but we can have that as as a vote, but it won't count towards the total. All right, well, thank you for that. I just want to move on. I know that was a long discussion. I just want to very briefly comment that there's 3 other initiatives that I know that pertain to nursing. One is that the Board of Regents proposed to expand nursing faculty positions to support the UH West Oahu, UH Manoa Nasin program that is kind of like a hub and spoke. So UH West Oahu does the pre-nursing education, and then they apply to Nasin and then complete their curriculum on the leeward coast of Oahu. And so that is in the Board of Regents request. That was an initiative that I was brought into, and Jeanette and Clem were also a part of that discussion and decision making. There are many more requests and needs. I just want to recognize that in UH, the community colleges got a lot of money and support legislatively last year. And so many of those faculty requests that were made through the legislature last year didn't get funded by the UH through the UH Health Initiative, but then were able to be supported because of the overall support that the community colleges received. And then we'll continue to work on supporting the needs of the other schools, both the private schools as well as UH Hilo, that continue to strive to expand their programs. And then the second initiative is Hawaii Keiki. That is the school health initiative between DOE and NASN. And there's efforts to support not nursing positions, but the health tech position. So that is a nursing initiative. And then the third is there's ratio bills updated. And I just happened to see somebody in from HNA in the at the Capitol. Clem and I ran into them today, and they said that they would be working to have the bill introduced last year picked up again this year. So we can just keep our eyes out for that, but kind of no new information about that other than kind of just Coconut Wireless. Okay, so program updates. We have had a long discussion today, but we just want to highlight, I want to take the time to highlight the really incredible work that the Center for Nursing does. The staff are really, really committed to their individual programs and collaborative work with each other and with our state partners. And it's really evident in this past year's annual report. So this is the second year that we're reporting on the fiscal year instead of the calendar year, because writing a report in October for a calendar year end is really difficult. And so we've made a better report because of the change in the timeline. So I just want to recognize that. It's really, really, really fantastic. And so I don't know if you all were able to read it or review it over the past couple of weeks, but if you have any comments, I have any questions or any suggestions, I just wanted to provide that open forum to you all.
I just want to thank you all, every single one of you. It's just stellar. And when you read it as a body of work, it's just incredible the amount of influence and good you have infused into nursing and into our state. So thank you so much.
I also want to recognize that because we ended in June, there's really exciting work that happened in the latter part of the year. And so it will continue to be a 1-2 punch of really good work and outcomes. So the upcoming year, we'll see this continued. Carrie's also providing actually, I'd like to go to that link. Can I share my screen again, Bree? So I want to actually share with you all in case you haven't seen that. This is not legible. So the link that Carrie provided, if you go to workforce reports and then on dashboards, you can find this link, and she updates, so nursing faculty, pre-license and LPN program data. But if we just click on one of these, she updates these dashboards. So it's trending data over time. And then if you want to see like, let's see, only community colleges, then you can see this information broken down by your area of interest. So it's really interesting information. You can see, and that if for, let's say for just community colleges in general, then I believe all of these updates, is that true, Carrie? And then so you can see vacancy rate, vacancy rate by FTE type, full or part-time, et cetera. So this is chock full of information. It's really powerful data. So I just want to, and it's pretty exciting to see that trend. You can really see kind of the state of nursing education over time. And then your dashboards, there is also the workforce supply. These are the ones that you said you just updated, or was it education?
No, that was education ones.
Or
I haven't
that's-
updated anything for supply.
Yeah, okay. And so we will also, she's started updating these. So this will be really good data for the workforce supply as that work unfolds. She's writing the report right now though. So first things first. Sure.
Wow. I'm looking at the dashboards. They're amazing.
Yeah, they're cool.
I need a
right?
cup of coffee for this one.
I tried not to make them too dense, but you know,
No,
just like the highlight statistics that I typically get asked about for each type of program or the faculty. So
it's so great.
I'm really impressed.
Encouraging too.
I'm really impressed with the technology that you're using, Karen.
it's Tableau does all the hard work, man. I had to figure out how to use it. It's picky, but Tableau is doing all the hard stuff. I'm glad you guys like them.
All right. And does anybody have any other comments about the annual report or? No, okay. So initiatives and priorities, we do want to pick up the wellness as a factor of recruitment and retention. I had a really nice conversation with Rose Hata at the at Linda Beechner's conference, and I think that was September. It was a couple months ago. So we have outlined the objectives that we'd like to, our goals and our objectives, and we also have individual activities. The next step of our work is, there's multiple steps, but the next step of our work, one is to start convening statewide partners to adopt this work. Second, in no particular order, is to pick from the many activities. And so we don't want to bite off more than we can chew. We want to pick activities that are achievable, and also pick a variety of activities. So a few short-term activities that may be accomplished in 6 months, less than a year, a few mid-range activities, so like a year and a half, and a few long-range activities, 2, 3, 4 years. And then over that compilation of activities, we want to be able to have achievements throughout time over the next several years, because we know that achieving a sea change in a work environment and culture, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a 6-month initiative. It is probably a generational initiative. So, but trying to schedule that out so we have a long-range goal. So that work needs to pick up. We were hoping to hire a policy and strategic initiative position, but I think we might need to look at a different strategy for that staffing support and maybe look for a consultant to help pick up additional work tasks related to this. Because as you saw with the annual report, our staff are chock full with their programmatic activities as already assigned. So needing to focus on that. What I'd like to do is have some strategic conversations with some of you one-on-one to really be specific about the implementation phase of this. I don't want to sit on this. I think the work and the contributions that many of you have provided already, as well as our state partners who've been engaged in this process, shouldn't be sitting on a shelf, and we want to make sure that it gets into the implementation swiftly. So if you have any comments, or if anybody wants to opine on the process or provide counsel on the process, please, this is the open forum, and we can also have those discussions one-on-one.
Laura, do we have a subcommittee working on this?
We have had a subcommittee. The next step is launching it. So, and thank you for asking. And I think Arthur, I mean, you and Rose, some of the other active members, Renee has worked on it as well. There's, we have a working committee that has compiled this document, and then we really need to move it into a next phase one that has assigned staff or contracted work to help with that implementation, and then continue that working group. So we haven't met since maybe September. And in part, that was because we were finishing up some very large projects, launching the Good Jobs Grant with specialty training for nurses, doing the Nurse License Compact. We had the Sim Huddle conference, and then Carrie had is doing the workforce supply. So we had to kind of table it for the fall. But yeah, bringing back that work group, and then also assigning personnel, either contracted or hired, to support the implementation, the community conversations, and then that the commitment from community partners. Yeah. It's still, I will say also, in having some conversations with the National Healthy Nurse Healthy Nation and the nurse staffing think tank leader, this is the first approach to take this as a statewide initiative across the nation, it seems. So it's a pretty innovative approach, trying to kind of lift the responsibilities off individual organizations and move it to a state level when it's appropriate. And so I think that challenge, knowing that we don't have anyone to look to for inspiration, like we are the inspiration, that's also something, is that we are really leading the pack in this initiative.
Well, it's the hot topic in every conference or seminar you go to. So even
Maybe.
physicians, this is their focus right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and to your question, Arthur, we can start pulling back those the working group meetings as well. All right, so last item on our agenda is we have some updates to provide. One is we have the National Forum's Nursing Workforce, the National Forum of State Nursing Workforce Centers annual conference is going to be in San Diego, actually La Jolla, June 17th through 19th. There are abstracts, calls for abstracts open. We can send that out to the board. The staff has received it. And if anybody is interested in attending, please let us know. And then the forum also now has an opportunity for individual membership. And so I have, just so you all know, it used to be just me and Carrie, and now I've expanded it. So Leanne, Catherine, Bree, as well as Anne and our vice chair have membership to this as well. But then if somebody wants to attend, it's a really good learning opportunity and networking, hearing what other state nursing workforce centers are doing. Okay, so let us know, reach out to Bree and I if you have interest. And then Bree, do you want to have this conversation? Oh, you're on mute. So we have annual responsibilities to support board training. We do that through strategic planning, and then as well as onboarding. So we're starting to plan our board training activities in the future, and these are topics. If you would like to, if there's anything in particular that you would like training on, we do commit to the professional development of you all as well. So let us know specifically if you have certain requests for board development, and we'll commit to it.
Sorry,
Hey.
Laura. Sorry about having been on mute.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, I think initially when we were looking at identifying training, we really were kind of looking at building it around the board, helping to support the well-being initiative. But there may be other areas. So this might be a topic for kind of an informal discussion through email. I don't know, unless anyone has any ideas about what they would like.
Yeah. And you can provide that ongoing communication to Bree or I.
I mean,
And
aside
that's not
from the
official business. We
procedural
can
thing,
talk about it.
aside from procedural things, I really like, to know the best way to utilize all this power to support the initiatives that you're doing right now. So when I see this and I see wellness at the top, then I think that's a great choice of, a vector to develop all of us in, to really get behind it, to give it some teeth and some oomph. But any of the categories that you would really like specific help in, those are great areas that we could use development in so that we could, you know, practically help.
Thank you, Anne. All right. And then, Anne, did you have a question about the date of the strategic planning session?
Why, yes, I do. Because, given the academic schedule that I have, the time that I have off is June 15th to August 15th, more or less. And, the likelihood of me being off the island is quite high. So I would really love, to have it be the week after, faculty have to report to duty, which would make it something like, right now it's August 10th, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the 17th would be grand.
And the 16th is statehood day. It is a 3-day weekend. So I don't know if that's a plus or
Yeah,
con.
so people might be out and about for that. So the 24th is grand too. So I would request, but I know how schedules are, and this is just me and my exact schedule. But to me, if I could pick any day on the whole calendar, it would be the 24th. But the 17th would be better than the 10th. So I'm not sure how to exactly do that, if there may be like doodle poll kind of thing. You know, so everyone could look at their own calendars, or if you kind of know right now, like I have my calendar open, so I can see it.
Bree, which would you prefer from an administrative standpoint?
With that, Laura, it doesn't really matter whether it's done by doodle poll or not. I think we may want to ensure that we don't have anything going on at the center. I don't know, August is a time as well that you tend to have travel obligations, so I don't know. You can speak to those.
We'll take that. We can take moving the meeting time to a vote for next meeting. So, and we can do some investigation in the meantime in terms of calendars and availabilities and events.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
And then to the next question is, where should we have it this year? Does anybody have any recommendations or preferences? All right. The world is our oyster.
I can host you on Maui College campus any day you want to come here.
Oh, thank you for that. We got some smiles with that suggestion, Anne. We'll take that into consideration and put that into the next vote as well.
We could all do a outrigger paddle, you know, little team building. I got a hook up there.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So we also have some updates about our board. So one is Roberta Haley, and if you've paid attention to Chaminade News lately, you might be aware of this, but Roberta Haley has rescinded her position as vice chair. And the reason is because she'll be moving out of the state by the end of the year, and she's kind of in a transition by the end of the school year. Because of that, we have a vacancy for our vice chair position. And so we will need a vote for a self-nomination for the vice chair position, and then we will be working to fill that vacancy during this legislative session. And then we also had 3 interim appointments this past legislative, or during the interim session after the legislative session. So Renee, Eva, and Jeanette Ayers-Kawakami. Eva actually has moved out of the state. She had sudden obligations that required her to move to the mainland. And so she has resigned. So Eva had 1 meeting with us, and we wish her well in her next adventure. And then for Renee and Jeanette, the process is to formally apply back into the Board of Nurses, or board through the governor's site, so that you can come through the confirmation process. So we can check to see if they'll just push forward all the information you provided last year. Otherwise, we'll make sure that it gets put in. And then we've already communicated through the university system that you're an interim and will be needing that Senate confirmation. So the process that you didn't go through that everybody else has is that Senator Donna Mercado Kim, the higher education chair, will contact you, ask you a couple questions, and then there will actually be a hearing, and that hearing will be the Senate confirmation. So it's a formal process. But it's also a nice opportunity for you to highlight your skill sets and your unique contributions that you can provide. And thankfully, because of COVID, we have optimized our remote engagement process, so it's much easier to testify in a hearing through Zoom, and so you don't have to fly to Oahu if your schedule doesn't accommodate anymore. So we can work with you on that. So with that, I just want to say that we do have a vacancy for vice chair, and we will be needing self-nominations for that position. So I want to open that up now.
It's Gloria. I would be interested in throwing my hat in the ring for the vice chair.
Thank you, Gloria. And does anybody have any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, what we can do is then, if we have a motion. Oh, Carrie, can you help me through this process? I don't know how, this is not the normal voting process. Help me I think we all need a training on Robert's Rules of Order and
I can make the motion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's a simple motion too.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so if we can have a motion
I
from
move that we have Gloria Fernandez fill in the vice chair position. So we need a second to the motion.
I second the
Okay.
motion.
Then can we do another roll call, Anne? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I opened the participant list. That makes it so easy. Okay, so Arthur, yay or nay?
Yay.
Okay, Linda.
Yay.
Okay, I'll make this long. Renee,
Yay.
thank you. Is Gloria gonna say?
Yeah, she's eligible for a vote.
Okay, Gloria,
I guess I gotta go with a yay.
you got it, sister. Jeanette
Yay.
and Renee,
Oh, Rose is next.
Rose. Oh, I have Renee on mine. Did I already
Oh,
ask
okay.
Renee?
You asked Renee already.
Okay, well, it's funny, it's shaking around in my participant. Rose,
Yay.
and
yourself,
I vote
Anne.
yay as well. So that's a unanimous vote.
Yay, Gloria. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really, really appreciate your willingness to nominate yourself and take on this position.
Yeah.
All right. And I don't have any other announcements. It's 7:01. Does anybody else have any other announcements they'd like to provide? Okay, well, thank you. Welcome, Gloria, as chair or vice chair, sorry. And for the record, I just want to say that Roberta has been wildly supportive in her role as vice chair, and we will be missing her contribution as she slowly steps away from her duties and prepares for her transition out of the state. But I know that she will still be a close friend and resource to us, guys, because that's who she is.
Definitely a big loss
Yeah.
for Hawaii nurses.
Yeah. All right. Well, Anne, I think we can
Adjourn as of, what time is it? 7:02. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Aloha.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Way to go, Laura.
No, thanks, Anne. All right, well, we will be in touch. We'll be moving things forward, and I appreciate everybody's support on this, and yours in particular.
Yeah, go home. I'm sure dinner will be on the table waiting for you, right?